Outlaw Sports is brought to you by Molson Canadian, made from Canada, and Rocky Mountain Barbecue, Alberta barbecue cuisine at its best. Well, I know we're going to get at it pretty fast, so let's just jump right into this quarterback thing. Drew Tate did not look too bad at all, but I think you think he's the be-all, end-all.
I don't think he's the be-all, end-all. I think he has potential to be. But from what I was gathering being around the team, which not as significant as some other reporters, I get the sense that players are going to respond to Drew Tate more so now than they are to Henry Burris. I sense that when I interviewed the players before the game, and I saw that. They seem to rally around Drew Tate's abilities, whatever he does, and whatever he accomplishes more than Henry.
Well, let's wait and see what happens when he plays Montreal next week. Then let's have a real argument, because that will be the true acid test for him. This kind of reminds me, Grant, of what happened up in Edmonton with Ricky Ray and Jason Moss. Ricky Ray was the king. All of a sudden, he lost his touch. They bring in Jason Moss. Jason Moss came in, the right circumstances, was able to beat the Stamps a couple of times in the playoffs, looked pretty darn good, but didn't have the finishing stuff at the end. Similar thing, Ricky Ray is still one of the top quarterbacks in the CFL, had a brutal year last year. Again, you got to be patient. These guys, as professional athletes, sometimes have slumps. You just can't throw them away. Can't throw the baby out with the bathwater is what I'm saying here.
Let's not forget, Drew Tate is not just a backup who said, well, let's cross our fingers. He has been around for 5 years. He probably should have been starting somewhere in the CFL this year. In fact, if the Stamps hadn't made a big, bold move and signed him to a bigger contract than you would for most backups, he probably would have been starting in Toronto right now.
I agree with you 100%.
So therefore, he's in a position more than other backup quarterbacks. I talked to Darian Durant the day before the game, quarterback for the Riders, and he knows both guys. He knows Henry Burris. They're friends off the field. Drew Tate and Darian were teammates in Saskatchewan. He says, you know, I think what Henry has to do now is sit and watch, might be good for him. Because sometimes veterans kind of forget. They forget that enthusiasm. They forget what made them good in the past. It just happens. You think as a veteran, you can just go through it because you have the experience. So perhaps this is the best thing to reignite Henry's career.
What scares me a little bit, Grant, and he looked great in that first half, the yards that he didn't get in the second half, and he threw his 2 picks against a pretty average defense. Again, let's see what happens next year or next week. But really, it's this whole Stamps team that's kind of got me a little concerned. Right now, the coaching staff is very concerned about how the receivers are running their routes. They're not disciplined enough. They're not doing a 6-yard out. They're doing a 2 and a roll, you know? So they want to get more precise as the playoffs come down.
I think the Stamps receivers aren't very good. That was a team strength for a number of years, but I think right now, how many drop balls have we seen this year, and especially the last game against the Riders? So I agree with you right there. But getting back to Tate, I don't think this is a movie made for TV where this guy is going to lead this team to the promised land and win the Grey Cup. Might happen. He's a good quarterback, but I think the Stamps are ready now to hand the ball off to him and say, this is going to be your team. We're now going to form this team around. So I don't think he's the be-all, end-all. But Mike, you were saying, when you're defending Henry Burris, that offensive line's not very good. It doesn't look as bad with Drew Tate. So I think overall, Drew Tate seems to galvanize this team that Henry Burris couldn't do. That's all. And if teammates respond to Drew Tate right now, that's all you can ask for. Let's hope he can take the Stamps to a better place. If something breaks down, Henry's in a better place because of watching for a few games. It's a win-win situation.
Grant, I'm going to point to Archibald, the best tackle the Stamps have had. Hufnagel didn't want to sign him, didn't want to pay the money. We can find somebody better out there, but they didn't. So he goes off to BC. Not only do you have to replace him, now you have to beat him. And I think that's the point I'm making here with Henry. They will eventually let him go, and then he'll find life and he'll come back. That's my prediction. Tate does look good. There's no doubt about it. But let's see what happens against Montreal and Winnipeg.
But isn't this the changing of the guard, that it's time for this core to be changed? Joffrey Reynolds, Henry Burris. Rambo's gone. His career is probably shot right now. He's done. Stamps haven't said that. So
ACL and MCL, Grant.
So therefore,
he's not coming back.
So therefore, it's Landon Talley, Drew Tate's time, John Cornish's time. It's the changing of the guard for the Stampeders right now. If the team responds to those guys and they can get the job done, I say it's a positive.
Hi, I'm Henry Burris. I love Calgary, and I'm proud to call this place home. While Calgary has an interesting history, there aren't a lot of buildings that remain since the early days. And some of those that are left are in pretty bad shape.
Now we can revitalize this area with the use of robotic parking. It's efficient, it's accessible, and it's safe. The best part is that it's easy to use. For more information and a chance to invest with us, visit 7th Avenue Autopark.com.
Well, my brother from another lifetime, Grant Pollock, was sitting here going on about Drew Tate. This is the next best thing. And we got a little heated. I simply said one thing. Let's see what he does against Montreal.
Right.
And then let's have a full-blown discussion about it. Your thoughts? Could you cover the Stampeders closer than anybody? What was your take after the big win against Saskatchewan?
Well, I thought he came out of the gates really nice, and it was, if he had some help from his teammates, they would have put a lot of points on the board in the first half, and it wouldn't have even been close. Romby Bryant dropping that pass, or dropping a fumble in the first drive, that drive looked to be headed towards a touchdown. They were moving the ball nicely. They stalled on their second one, missed a field goal. There was 10 points they could have had there.
Sure.
And the rest of that half, really efficiently moving the ball. They only had one possession where they were deep in their own zone. He moved it out a little bit, and then they punted. That's exactly what they want in that situation. Then in the second half, a little adversity. The clock has to move and time has to go. He's not a starting quarterback in that sense, so he's got to get used to playing a full game. And he even mentioned that he was a little bit mentally worn down. And that's going to happen when you have your first start. So, next week, this week against Montreal, that is, I'm really interested to see how it goes and whether that team can still distribute the ball among all their playmakers. 10 guys caught passes.
Yep.
That's a lot of using of all the weapons that you have.
Pretty fabulous, when you can do that. But again, you are playing Saskatchewan, and Saskatchewan had their chances too to win this thing in stalled drives and settling for field goals as well. And Durant, sore foot and all, didn't look too bad when he got to play. And then, of course, but I didn't understand that one. Playing him, nothing on the line except pride, maybe saving a couple of jobs. Yeah. But it didn't make any sense. But going back to this team, everyone's saying, okay. I drew this analogy to Grant again. I said, look at what Ricky Ray has gone through a lot in the last few years. Remember, Jason Moss came off the bench, played well here in the playoffs. He was the man that people were wanting to get rid of him, bring him back, Now look at him. I mean, it's something in this league with these veteran quarterbacks that you better not be too fast to get rid of the good ones.
Right.
Because they could come back and bite you in the ass.
Well, and the scenario with Ricky Ray is so interesting. He came out guns a-blazing three times in the Grey Cup in his first 4 years, or first 4 years before he started the league, and then has tailed off, and they've gotten back to a core group. You can't just put it all on the quarterback.
Yeah.
And if you have a guy who you think is the man, you got to stick with him for a while. Now, it's interesting to see, are they going to do that with Drew Tate now? Are they going to say, Drew Tate's our guy, we're going to build around him, his strengths? He reminds me a lot of Dave Dickinson with a lot of more mobility and really an awareness in the pocket that he's not going to take a hit. That's what Dave's problem was. He'd stand in to take a hit because he was a tough guy.
Yeah.
Drew's also tough, but he's not stupid to take hits like that that can hurt your career. It's really a weird scenario because Henry Burris can still play in this league. He can still be a starting quarterback, and he can still win games. So does he do that somewhere else?
My feeling is I think the decision's already been made, and I think he's an upgrade at least 3 different spots in this league.
Right.
Toronto is screaming for help, as we both know. I mean, they would have taken either of these guys at the start of the year had they been available, but you knew that wasn't going to happen.
The interesting thing is with Drew Tate, he had suffered a dislocated shoulder in training camp or in preseason. And you think, well, you want to have a really solid backup. Well, who do you go and get as a veteran backup? Ideally, you'd like to have Henry Burris coming off the bench for you, a guy who has no trouble going in and making the plays happen and winning some games if possible. That might be the scenario they would ask him to come back as that backup. I can't envision that happening. Henry's got
at that money.
No, but the thing is that's the thing.
And Henry's pride.
You'd have to get him to restructure his contract. and take away those years that he has left.
Sure.
Because he's got a couple of years left. He's not going to have a couple of years left after being a backup for a couple of years.
That's right.
So his time is now to finish out as a starter. You know, in 2 years' time, I could see him being a veteran backup, the way Danny McManus
Sure,
was at
fair
the end
enough.
of his career.
Yeah, and that's a good point. There is still something left in Hank's tank, and he does. The one thing this thing has really shown him is that he does want to. He still has the desire to play. This hurts him.
Oh, yeah.
This hurts him to the core, and sometimes that's what you need to get on in life. Whether it's a girl that's dumped you, it's a job that you wanted to leave, but they maybe help you out the door. Thank you, Global. You're better for it. You're better for it. You're a better person because of it, and you move on.
It's tough to break up a marriage like this. It's been 7 years,
Yeah.
right? And it looked like it was going to be a marriage until the end of the career. And
Yeah.
it just doesn't work out that way in professional football. Eventually, you're going to get shown the door whether you like it or not. And now it's going to be probably not.